Well, to pick up on that, I'm joined by the journalist and broadcaster, the French journalist and broadcaster, Christine Krent, and one of the leading lights of the Leave campaign, Dan Hannan. A very good evening to you. Christine, how does all of this look from France this evening?
Well, it looks pretty ghastly. But at the same time, listening in to the very interesting discussion you just had, Evan, I think you shouldn't underestimate the determination of the key member states on the continent not to let the Brits play the fiddle, determine the timetable, and, you know, we should just sit and wait for them to actually act. I think very much will depend on what happens on Monday, when Madame Merkel meets in Berlin with François Hollande, the Italian Prime Minister, and Donald Tusk, the President of the European Council. I think that you will hear what the tone will be, and again, as has been said by our Brussels correspondent, there's that series of meetings next week. And again, you know, the European Union had been functioning for 17 years before Britain was accepted in. So I think there's a degree of arrogance at times, if I may, even at a late hour in the night.
Wouldn't be the first
sort of
time.
Thinking that we're going to disintegrate after this rather ghastly result.
Can I just push you? So, sorry to interrupt. Can I push you? I mean, David Cameron is stepping down. It's going to take a good 2 or 3 months to elect a new Prime Minister, a new leader of the Conservative Party. No one really feels that David Cameron can do the negotiation. You're going to have to wait 3 months before this starts, aren't you?
Yes, but do you think that people in Brussels will just sit and wait? I think the process is going to be so complicated. The economic and financial costs, we've seen nothing today. Of course, the pound lost a great deal of value, and the markets will be shaken for quite some time. So I think there will be a lot of work being done in the meantime. And, you know, it's not going to be done by a snap of the finger, but again, I think on the continent, there's also this idea that the British people, especially the older generation, the ones who really have deprived the young ones of all the benefits of Europe, they are going to feel the brunt. And that is something which on the continent will be closely watched, especially by those Eastern European countries, which may, I remind you, Britain wanted so much inside the EU.
Indeed.
And now complains about immigration
Christine, let me put
from
your point.
Eastern Europe.
Let me put your points to Dan Hannan. Dan Hannan, firstly, they don't want us to take all this time and sit around thinking about it. They just want us to get on with it, and that's a perfectly reasonable request, isn't it?
Well, you've already answered that point, Evan. We have to wait until there's somebody to do the negotiation, so it can't start until that's taken place. I think getting this right matters much more than the time. And by getting it right, I mean being fair to our friends and allies on the continent, as well as getting a deal that is in our own interest. And it would be crazy to rush into something after 43 years at the expense of getting something that's mutually satisfactory.
Jonathan Powell said we need to have an election. You can't... we haven't yet worked out what the plan is, what the model is. Do you agree with that?
No, I mean, one of the reasons that Brussels is so unpopular is because it's seen to be contemptuous of public opinion. It swats aside referendums. It's incredible that less than 24 hours after the result, we've already got people trying to undo it. But what I would say, if I may sort of temper or soften what I've just said a little bit, although plainly we have a verdict that says that we are going to leave the European Union, it was a narrow majority. 48% of people voted to stay in.
Yep.
Scotland voted to stay in.
50, yep.
Right. Northern Ireland, Gibraltar voted to stay in. We who are on the winning side have to be cognizant of the extent to which opinion is divided. We have to try and carry as many Remain voters with us, and that may well mean that quite a lot of the existing arrangements remain in place, and that we try and find a status that both Leavers and Remainers can live with.
I've heard you talk about this, and it sounds like you, Daniel Hannan, I don't know whether you're speaking for Vote Leave or for Boris Johnson or for anybody else, it sounds like you are veering towards something closer to the Norway option, as a compromise between the 48 and the 52.
I mean,
in the single market, yeah?
Right. My issue with the EU has always been the lack of sovereignty, the lack of democracy. Yeah. You know, of course there are economic issues as well. It wouldn't be exactly Norway, obviously. We're a very different country. We're 65 million rather than 5 million. But the idea of staying within a common market, but outside the political integration, I think that is feasible, yes.
And that means free movement of people.
It means free movement of labour. It doesn't mean EU citizenship with all the acquired rights.
I'm sorry, we've just been through 3 months of agony on the issue of immigration, and the public have been led to believe that what they have voted for is an end to free movement.
Here is a very, very important point. From the moment we joined, we had the right to take up a job offer in another member state. You had a legal entitlement if you presented your contract. Now, that changed with Maastricht. When EU citizenship was introduced, people were given legal entitlements to live in other countries, to vote in other countries, and to claim welfare and have the same university tuition and so on. That bit, I think, is going to change. That means that we can deport people.
Why didn't you say this in the campaign? Why did you not say in the campaign that you were wanting a system, a scheme where we had free movement of labour? Come on, that is completely at odds with what the public think they have just voted for.
I have just spent 4 months addressing rallies virtually every day, and at every one I would say, do not imagine that if we leave the EU, that means zero immigration from the EU. It means we will have some control over who comes in and in what numbers.
You've given the impression. The words take back
it's all there. It's all there on YouTube. You can see it all.
Your campaign has given the impression that we will not be able to get immigration down to tens of thousands if we're out inside the EU. I think most people would say that gives the impression we will get it down to tens of thousands if we're outside the EU.
No, we've always been clear. We want a measure of control. It will be for a future parliament to determine the numbers and to determine, how many students, how many doctors, how many family reunifications, whatever. But I don't think anyone's ever tried to put a number on it. That's obviously going to depend on the state of the economy at the time.
Dan Hannan, thank you very much. Christina Krent, thank you. I had meant to come back to you, Christine. We're out of time, but I hit a nerve there with Dan Hannan. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, there's one other potential.